Hello, I'm Hemant, and this is my assignment 4 video on protected routes, validation, and password hashing. This is for assignment 4. I will be answering 3 required questions for the lesson, like the difference between authentication and authorization, how JOI validation fits into user and task creation, and why passwords should be hashed. Um, and before they are stored. Both of the tests, 4A and 4B, are passed. And let's move on to the next slide. So, what is the difference between authentication and authorization? Authentication asks who is logged in. Authorization is asking that whether that logged in user is allowed to access any specific resource. Okay, and this assignment global.userid is the temporary authentication signal. If it holds a user object, someone's logged in. If it's null, no one is. Task ownership is the authorization check. A logged in user should only see update or delete tasks where the task user ID matches their own email. And it's worth noting global.userid is only a learning scaffold. Uh, it's shared by the whole server, tracks just one user at a time, and resets on a restart. So it's a non-production ready. Think of it as like admin versus like a regular user. So here's the actual code. On the left, we have the middleware slash authentication auth.js, and if global.userid does not exist, it will return a 401 immediately. Otherwise, it calls the next. Um, in app.js, okay, this middleware sits in front of a task router, so every task route requires a login user before it runs. On the right, it's the ownership check from the show function. It finds tasks matching both the task ID and the current user email. That single comparison is the entire ownership check. So you can access it's for show, update, or delete for the other CRUD operations. How does GOI validation fit into user and task creation? So it checks incoming data before it is stored. Okay, it requires fields, types, length rules, and cleanup like trimming or lower casing before any controller touches it. Error is set when the data does not match the schema. So if it exists, the controller stops early. Um, if it exists, the controller stops early and will return a 400 with error. Dot message dot value is cleaned up data Joy produces after validation succeeds. Um, and controller use values instead of raw req.body because JOI may have transformed the data. Using the raw body would throw away those cleaned up results. Here my validation schemas. The task schema requires a title between 3 and 30 characters and defaults is completed to false if it is not provided. Patch task schema is different. In there every field is optional since it's a partial update. But a minute one rejects a request with nothing to change at all. Creating a task needs at least a title. Updating a task can touch just one field, but it can't be empty. Why should passwords be hashed before we store them? Okay, storing a plain text password means anyone who reads your data or who even like does anything with it can actually see it. So there is a massive data breach, or any careless query or backup leak will reveal your actual password. And since people use passwords across sites, that risk spreads well beyond just the one app. So the flow changes. So register now hashes the password before storing it, and logon hashes the submitted password and compares it to the stored hash. The app never keeps the original. Specifically, register no longer stores passwords directly. It calls hash password and saves hash password instead, and logon no longer compares password to user.password. It calls compare password against user.hash password. Okay, so here's the code from the user.controller.js.hash password. Um, it generates a random salt, drives a key with the script, and then returns them together as a single string. Compare password splits that stored hash back into its Sultan key and redrives the key from the submitted password using the same salt and compares the two safely with crypto.timing save equal. This avoids leaking information through one tiny timing difference. Okay. On the right here, you can see exactly how register and logon use. These register stored hashed password on the new user object, and logon only sets the logged in user if compared password confirms a match. So in summary, authentication is who's logged in, tracked with global user ID, while authorization is whether they can touch any specific task, checked with task.userid, global.userid.email, and the auth middleware only protects task routes since register, logon, and logoff have to stay public. For error means the data failed validation, and value is clean data controller should actually store. And plain text passwords are dangerous because any breach can expose your real password. So register stores a hash password instead. It stores a hash instead, and logon compares against that hash rather than doing a direct password match. And that is it for assignment 4. Thank you for watching.